Oh, what's going on, GameLeapers? This is KAYN, and in today's video, you're going to learn everything you need to know about Season 12 KAYN. So we're talking playstyle in terms of Shadow Assassin against Rast. We're talking about when to pick Shadow Assassin and Rast, jungle clears, combos, tips and tricks that not many people know about, and of course your runes and builds, skill order. So everything is going to be packed into this 10 or so minute video. So make sure you stick around for the whole thing and let us know in the comment section who you want us to make a guide on next, so you guys can go ahead and use all the tips we give you to master that champion. And also make sure, guys, if you are enjoying these guys, to leave a like down below so we know you actually enjoy them. And let's get into the KAYN guide. So let's start by talking about playstyle. And the big debate is Shadow Assassin or Rast. Which one do I want to go in the game I'm in? Well, if the enemy team has a lot of tanky champions and bruisers, going Rast is definitely the best option because you deal max health damage in a lot of your abilities, and you also have the sustain through conquering just your kit to withstand the tankiness and be unkillable yourself. But if the enemy team does have a lot of squishy champions, going Shadow Assassin is the best way because unlike Rast, you are about quick burst damage and one-shotting enemy champions. But it is important to know that during the early stage of a game, so even before your mythic item, KAYN generally speaking is not the strongest champion. This is why lots of KAYN players are going to full clear or just try hit level 6 in their form without feeding too much. You are an amazing scaling champion, so what we don't want to do is feed during the early game, and we'll get into how we can do that in regards to our jungle clears. But let's focus a little bit more on the Shadow Assassin and the Rast version of KAYN. So Shadow Assassin, like I said, you are an assassin. You are about burst damage and killing enemy champions quickly. So really when we get this form, we want to be thinking about the champions we can actually kill. So it's probably better to target those squishy enemy champions rather than trying to kill them outright top lane. And once the game does start opening up into the mid and late game and there's fights around dragons and barons, you should be looking for enemy champions when they're farming side lanes. You should be looking for enemy champions using fog of war and sweepers and vision control, because attacking that squishy enemy champion from the shadows is going to give you the best chance possible of nuking them rather than just running at them in straight lines where they can see you. So always try to think about flanks and different angles you can attack the enemy champions from. This is a very effective way to think about playing Shadow Assassin KAYN. Now as far as Rast goes, you can actually play the same way in these mid to late game team fights by flanking the enemy backline and creating angles for them to think about. But generally speaking, when you're playing Rast, this is a much more forgiving and consistent playstyle because you're not that one-shottable. You are going to be building HP, armor, and magic resist in your kit as far as your build goes, but you still can deal a lot of damage to the enemy backline and those champions who don't have armor. The big difference is that Rast can stay in the fight for a heck of a lot longer because you'll have so much Omnivamp from using your abilities and healing off landing these on the enemy champions. So Shadow Assassin is the quick 1-2 punch and Rast is the 12-round sustainer. So now that we've covered the playstyle of jungle KAYN, let's talk about the jungle clears. Now for all of these clears, there are 3 very important things to understand. The first, your Q if you collide with terrain, the animation will be quicker, meaning you can auto attack more and therefore clear faster. The second, you always want to be starting with your Q, then getting your E at level 2 for the terrain passing and sustain, and at level 3 it really depends. If you're going to continue clearing your camps and there is no threat of getting invaded, put a second point in your Q. But if you are looking to gank or fight the enemy jungler who's invading, get your W. And third, when your auto attack is not on cooldown along with your Q, auto attacking and then Qing is the most efficient way of dealing damage because your slash will cancel your auto attacks animation. So the first clear we're going to look at is starting at Raptors, and you can even start at the enemy's Raptors, but make sure you late invade at around 125 because at this point they're probably on their red or blue buff and you can sneak in, take their Raptors and hit level 2, and even think about taking their red buff by Eing through the terrain towards it. But just to keep things safe on a normal clear when you're starting on your side of the map, we're going to go from Raptors to Krugs to red to wolves to blue and Gromp at the same time. This will give us level 4, and if you do it quick enough, in particular with the blue and Gromp at the same time, you can hit level 4 before that Scuttlecraft spawns at 3 minutes 15. And that's the same for the next clear. If you're going to start on your blue buff side, I recommend starting wolves because this will conceal where you're starting. This is extremely powerful in any elo because the laners are going to think you're starting perhaps on the other side of the map when really you're actually on the other side. So you have a massive threat because they don't know where you are, and after doing your wolves, you can do Gromp and blue, then go to Raptors, you're red, but just make sure, guys, you don't lock yourself into the full clear all the time, because as the map is changing, you want to be changing as well. So after you hit level 3 after clearing one side of the map, the enemy mid laner might be really pushed up, and even though you're still level 3, you can always consider swinging by mid, ganking that lane, and then going to your other side of the map. This is a very effective way of thinking about the jungle, and it applies to KAYN as well. Premeditating a full clear can often be a bad thing because you deny yourself yourself opportunities to get kills and do stuff on the map, so do stay flexible. Now let's move on to your combos, and KAYN is a very unique champion when it comes to combos because there are not really that many, but there are a couple of combinations to know about when going Shadow Assassin. So we're going to talk about the isolation combo here, and this is without your Prowler's Claw. So what you're going to do is you're going to W out of the terrain when you're Eing, then you're going to Q and auto attack, and then use your ultimate. Now depending on whether your ult will kill the target or not, you can either just run away and E again if you have it, or you can wait the full duration of your ultimate until your Q comes back up to finish the enemy champion off. So it's just a lot slower. Now the other isolation combo is with Prowler's Claw, and this just involves Wing again from your E's terrain and then using Prowler's Claw, your Q, your auto attack, and then your ultimate. And if your ulti kills them, kite away. If it doesn't, then you can finish them off when your Q comes back up again. But do be careful auto attacking mid combo here, especially in the late game, because it does take a bit of time for your auto attack to go through, even if you do it cleanly, because this could be the half second the enemy champions need to peel the target you're assassinating or to even kill you before you kill them. Now there might not be that many combos for KAYN, but there are certainly a lot of tips and tricks, and this is the next chapter of this guide. So first of all, when you are using your Q and you press W, KAYN will use his W immediately after. So essentially you will start a Q for your abilities. Now the problem with this is that it locks you into these animations for a second or two. And it may not sound like a long time, but in league terms it is. What you really want to be doing when you're fighting, clearing camps, just using your abilities, is to use them one after the other in kind of a reactive way. There needs to be a flow to how you press your keys. Now the next tip is to use your Q while in your E. Lots of people don't know that you can actually Q while Eing through terrain, and this can be really useful because after 1.5 seconds, if you're not attached to terrain, KAYN will actually bounce out of that terrain and you won't be able to use your E anymore. So using your Q to get to that next wall, to get to that tower, to keep your E going, this is a must know. Now next tip, using your ultimate to dodge skill shots and important abilities. This can be things like Malphite's ultimate, Elisa's cocoon, Caitlyn's ultimate, and even Sleep's. So if you get hit by Zoe's bubble trouble, try to press your R just as the Sleep is about to trigger. This is a must know because this will keep you alive, especially when you're playing Shadow Assassin, because if you get hit by one big ability, one bit of CC, you're probably going to get gray screened. Now the next tip will blow you away and is actually very OP. So while you're in your ultimate, you can actually use your blue smite, and because the blue smite slows enemy champions, this enables you to land your W a lot more consistently and get more kills. And of course, if your Q is up, it's pretty much guaranteed to land, so this is very useful. Now a much more well-known tip, and this is a big reason why you want to go blue smite on Shadow Assassin KAYN, is that you can blue smite an enemy champion and then ult them. This is especially useful when you need to gap close towards them or escape a dangerous situation. Now next tip, lots of people when they play KAYN seem to think that you have to only use your E when you are going through terrain. But remember, your E gives you movement speed and the ability to ghost through targets, like Fizz's passive. So if you need to catch up to an enemy champion, don't be afraid to just press your E for the movement speed and ghosting alone. It will be the difference. Now the last tip, when you transform into either one of your forms, you will be granted the Home Guard movement speed bonus out of base, but you don't have to evolve out of base. You can actually evolve next to your Nexus turrets, so don't just sit in base when you are evolving. Run next to your Nexus towers and then do it. Therefore you can run further out onto the map with the Home Guard bonus. Now let's talk about the runes and builds, and first off, the blue form. So First Strike for Shadow Assassin KAYN is probably the best keystone because it doubles the orbs you get when it's damage procs. So when you damage an enemy champion and your First Strike extra damage activates, you are accelerating your Shadow Assassin progression. Also, the extra damage is very nice because you are about hitting as hard as possible, as quickly as possible. We want to be a champion where if you blink, you will miss it. Now Eyeball Collection outscales sudden impact and you are a scaling champion. Ingenious Hunter works with so many of your items, your Tear, your Prowler's Claw, your Ghostblade, your Guardian's Angel, your Edge Knight. It's an unreal rune, so this is why we run this. Then you want to run 2 Adaptive Force and then Armor and Magic Resist depending on the enemy jungler's damage. Now as for Blue KAYN's items, we are starting with Halo Blade for the blue smite and a refillable potion. Now as for our early game backs, we want to build towards a serrated Dirk, but we also want to get a Tear in there as well. Once you have done this, it's time to think about those major items. So Prowler's Claw is just the best mythic. It gives you a ton of lethality, the active can come in super clutch and can be used as part of your combo, and while you could go Gore Drinker, if you are good mechanically on KAYN, you shouldn't need it to survive. Now as for your boots, getting Lucidity boots, these will be the most consistent, and I know some KAYN players might offer mobility boots, but you will have the extra movement speed from your E and your blue form, so it's a bit overkill. Now after your Prowler's Claw and Lucidity Boots, upgrade that tier into a Manamune. And after this is where it gets interesting, and it depends on the enemy team and what they're building. So if they have a ton of shields, and who doesn't in Season 12, Serpent's Fang. If they have a lot of ranged champions who might kite you, Cerulda's Grudge. If you are snowballing and want even more movement speed and damage, Ghostblade. If they have a lot of skill shots, Edge of Night. If you know you are going to probably die in fights because they've been focusing you all game, Guardian's Angel. These items are always giving us a lot of damage, but do have their specific situations to be built in, so make sure you know what these are and just pay attention to that scoreboard and those items the enemy champions are building. Now as for Rast and your runes, so this page is very standard. Conqueror because we like extended fights, Triumph because the healing during these extended fights can be huge, Tenacity because we can't do what we want to do if we're CC'd, and then Last Stand so it's a lot harder to die. Then for your secondary tree, I'm going to recommend the tree that best complements the Rast playstyle, which is centered around sustain. So take the Resolve tree with Conditioning and Revitalize. Conditioning makes us tankier as we scale into the game, and at this 12-minute mark we should be getting stronger and stronger, and then we want Revitalize. Well, it's just so broken because it works so well with our kit. Even Conqueror, even Triumph, even Death Stands, you just become unkillable. Then we want the same as blue KAYN here. We want 2 Adaptive Force and either Armor or Magic Resist for our minor runes. Now as for your items on Rast, start with the Ember Knife for Red Smite and a refillable potion. Then we want to aim for 1100 gold for our Iron Spike Whip, and we want to build this into a Gore Drinker as soon as we can. Now for our boots, we can choose between 3. Lucidity Boots if we are stomping, Plated Steel Caps if the enemy team has a lot of attack damage, and Mercury Treads if they have a lot of CC and magic damage champions. Now after these 2 items, well, this is where you need to think on your own 2 feet. So if the enemy team has a lot of attack damage, you can build a Death Stance, followed by a Thornmail and even a Randuin's Omen. If the enemy team has a lot of magic damage, you can build a Maw of Malmortius, followed by a Black Cleaver, Spirit Visage, and then even a Steris Gauge. But generally speaking, when the enemy team is balanced in terms of its damage, a typical build will go something like Gore Drinker, Steel Caps, Death Stance, Black Cleaver, Maw of Malmortius, Steris Gauge. Just like I said for blue KAYN, look at the enemy team, guys, and their champions and their items as well. And last up, we have your skill order. Now we touched on this when we were talking about jungle clears, so you want to start Q, then take E at level 2, and at level 3 either Q or W. Then either put another point in Q or your W at level 4. So regardless of what route you take to level 4, at this point you want 2 points in Q and 1 in W and E. Then we are maxing out our Q, then W, then E, and skilling our ultimate at level 6, 11, and 16. So that was the ultimate KAYN guide for Season 12. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you found this guide insightful and useful, please smash that like button, and so you don't miss any of our future uploads, hit that subscribe button as well. And until tomorrow's daily upload, this has been Coach Jigs. Peace.